Welcome to New York Got Game.
Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. It's your boy Dexter Henry here for the first episode in the month of March, which means it's March Madness time. Now, when you talk about March Madness, we're always talking about college basketball. Well, we're going to leave what's going on with the St. John's Red Storm just a little bit later in the show. We'll get to that. We got to talk about the New York Knicks because things have changed. Vibes last week were not so good. They might be different this week. So we got a special guest to talk about that. We're going to get right into it here on New York Got Game.
The Knicks are heating up.
All right, so the Knicks head into this week winners of 3 straight games. All of those games were nail-biters, and all of those games were clutch victories. But much different vibes around this team compared to last week. We're going to talk about those vibes. We're going to do it with a content creator and a very talented up-and-coming journalist. Her name is Mill, and she joins me now. Mill, how you doing? How's everything going? Been a while since I've seen you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. We have a lot to talk about between that game going into overtime, the incredible comeback. I'm excited to discuss it all.
So much to talk about that. And if you don't know what Mill's talking about, that is the game against the Miami Heat, which the Knicks won in overtime after being down 19 points, and it looked like it was not going to be good vibes following that game. But, Mill, I got to ask you about this because last weekend on this show, I was talking with JD from Knicks Fan TV, and we were talking about how the fact that it was a lost weekend and that Knicks fans were in their feelings after losing to the Cavs and the Celtics on the road. But this weekend, they went back-to-back road games in Memphis and Miami. So where are you right now on this Knicks team after this weekend and where they stand with 22 games to play? They're 40-20. Last week, the sky was falling for a lot of Knicks fans, but where are you with this Knicks team right now?
I mean, you mentioned it. Last weekend was really frustrating to go against those top teams and then just get embarrassed out there, get blown out, lose by double digits. It's not a good feeling at all to lose in a way against the teams we're supposed to be beating. But now I'm feeling a little bit better, but it was never really a matter of is this team good or not. You can obviously tell this team is good. We're third in the East for a reason. Specifically what happened last week was just, can we beat the top teams? And we can't. So this team is a good team. You know, we're third. We've won now 40 games, and we have a lot of potential to keep going. I feel good about this team. You know, there's been a lot of great wins this season. We've had some wins where we've put up 140 points on back-to-back nights. And there's games like this where we overcome a deficit as big as 19 points. And we look incredible in those moments where we're, just coming back in those moments and showing fans what the identity of this team is that they're fighters. So, yeah, I'm definitely feeling good about them right now. But there are still some concerns dealing with top teams like the Celtics, like the Cavs. It's definitely not a thought I can just shake out of my head. I'll still keep it in the back of my mind until we face either of those teams again this season and look forward to that matchup.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that a little bit later because you're right. That's not a thought that's just going to go away. That's still going to be there with this team. You're going to hear about that 0-7 record against the Celtics, against the Cavs, against OKC. But I do think that this weekend is a reminder that, as you said, this team can be really good, and they have beaten some other good teams. We've seen this multiple times this season, but just haven't beat those top teams. We'll get back to that a little bit later. But what we also saw this weekend, Mill, was the debut of Mitchell Robinson in Memphis. It's only 2 games. I get all that, but they're 2-0 with the Block This Monster in the lineup. What have you made of his impact since he's returned to this Knicks lineup? What are you seeing about the impact of Mitchell Robinson?
Yeah, first of all, super grateful and happy to have Mitch back out there. A super long recovery for him. I mean, he was expected to be out there. Well, at least fans were expecting him to be out there since December of this season, but it took a little bit longer than that in his recovery. So as fans, we're really glad to have him back out there. And what he brings to the table, it's not easily replaced or duplicated. Putting Cat at the starting center for this season so far has been a liability for us on the defensive end. And it's been a struggle to watch because, defensively, he just can't replicate what Mitchell Robinson brings to the table. His presence alone is something that is incredible. And to have him back now, it's giving us an advantage like none other. And I definitely think it could help boost this team. We're 2-0 in the Blockness Monster era so far. I'm hoping to keep it going. I mean, he's obviously on a minutes restriction right now. He's not playing too much. He's not starting. In Memphis, he only played 12 minutes. He only played 13 minutes tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing those minutes go up. He's our original starting center, and I want him back in that spot because of the defense he brings to this team. That's what we need in our starting center. And, first game, 6 points, 5 rebounds. I think that's good enough for me to see in his first showing back in the league for the first time in a long time. And immediately he just makes an impact with him out there and Cat on the bench. We're able to cut leads down. We're able to get stops. And that's something you saw tonight as well with him on the floor. And, he didn't get many rebounds tonight. He got 2 rebounds, only scored 2 points, but still, it's a matter of presence out there. When teams see him out there, it's a different ball game. It's a different mindset, knowing that he's in the paint and he has the ability to block everyone's shot and rebound really well.
You know what I've seen Mill in the first couple of games that I've really liked, and you talked about that, the presence, right? The fact that he's just altering shots. You saw that, you talked about tonight, we're recording this right after the win against Miami. You saw the fact that he was just able to change the defensive looks for the Knicks. Guys look more comfortable on the perimeter. That's something I'm seeing as well, too. And you're right, it's only 12 minutes against Memphis on Friday and then 13 minutes against Miami on Sunday. So very small sample size. We've only seen 25 minutes of Mitchell Robinson this season. But he absolutely is altering shots. He absolutely is impacting the defense. I will say this, because you brought this up, and I know you've seen this all through social media. I think there were some people in the fan base that expected Mitch to come back and be a cure-all for the defense. I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? But he does have an impact like you're talking about. And let me ask you this as a follow-up. What minutes would you like to see Mitch get to? Is it seeing him play 20, 25 minutes? Is that something you would like to see from him as he goes forward towards the end of the season over the next 22 games?
Most definitely. I would like to see that number climb up to 20, 25. I know it's going to be difficult because, given his injury history and he just came back, they want to take it slow. I trust them on that part. But I would like to see it climb up because I think that the more longer he's out there, the better it is for us, specifically on the defensive end. And that's where we've had the most struggles this season. So I would definitely like to see his minutes go up progressively. It could be very beneficial for us.
All right, we'll see if those minutes go up for Mitchell Robinson. Now, on Sunday, Knicks getting that win down in Miami. They played their 3rd overtime game in the last 7 games. Now, they've been tremendous in the clutch. You know this, Mill. 10 straight clutch wins. They were 16-7 in terms of clutch wins, clutch record this year in terms of wins. And Jalen Brunson, he's been at the center of these wins. He scored 14 of the team's final 23 points against the Heat. We saw what he did in Memphis. We saw what he did against Philadelphia. So he's been instrumental throughout this 3-game winning streak. What have you made of Captain Clutch's performance? And do you think the Knicks might be too reliant on him offensively in crunch time?
Jalen Brunson is called Captain Clutch for a reason. I mean, he has been incredible to say, it's just, he has been so clutch for this team where it's needed. And this isn't surprising to us because for as long as Jalen Brunson's been on the Knicks, he's been a very clutch player. Even in the playoffs, he's been carrying us in those crunch time moments. He's always been that guy for us. But it's just amazing to see him do it time and time again, game after game, in crunch time in those last few minutes when the Knicks need a shot. And he does it over and over. It's kind of surprising that other teams' defenses haven't figured him out yet, haven't defended him well around that 3-point line yet, because he's going to let it fly and he's going to sink it every single time. He's just been absolutely amazing in those crunch time minutes for us. And, in a matter of if the Knicks are the Knicks too reliant on him on offense in those minutes, I would say that right now, I think it's okay because, you look at the big time players, you look at their roles on teams. Specifically, you want Steph taking those shots in crunch time. He's the one that's going to carry the Warriors in clutch time. You want LeBron taking those shots, or Luka. You want Jason Tatum taking those shots. And for us, we want Jalen Brunson taking those shots. I put all my trust in him to take those shots. I think it's okay that we're a little reliant on him in those minutes because clearly he has a clutch gene, and we want him to take those shots if he's going to make it. He has the best probability right now for the Knicks. I do get a little bit worried in terms of if they double him, what is he going to do? No one else has the ability to create their own shot sometimes in those minutes. But then we saw where he can make the pass. He made the pass to OG in Memphis, and OG confidently shot that and made it. So I think that he has a lot of trust in his teammates, and we should have trust in them as well to make that shot if the pass goes that way.
I think that's fair because I did have some concerns, Mel, about other guys being able to create shots, right, if things break down, if Jalen Brunson gets doubled. But I think, as you mentioned so astutely, in Memphis, Clutch is not just making the shots, it's also making the right plays. And he made the right pass there in Memphis, finding OG Anunoby for that game-winning three. So he's trusting his teammates. That's huge, too. Okay, question I have about this. I see the sweatshirt you're wearing that's made by our guy Bacher Backpages. It's the Captain Clutch sweatshirt. What are we going with the official nickname here? Is it Captain Clutch? Are we going with Captain Crunch to play off the cereal? Like, what's the official nickname here for Jalen Brunson? What are we rocking with?
I think it's Captain Clutch, just because he's been so clutch. It has to be that. But it relates to Captain Crunch.
There you go. And obviously a really dope sweatshirt there by Bacher Backpages. Shout out to him and the great job he does in the gear and all the stuff that he makes, which is absolutely fantastic around the Knicks. So the team's been winning in the clutch, Mill. But a major question around this team this season has been, what is their identity? And I think particularly after what we've seen in the last couple of games, and we just talked about Jalen Brunson and everything that he's done, is it fair to question that their identity is just simply being clutch? They are a clutch team. Being a clutch team is the identity of the Knicks. What do you say about that? Is that their identity right now?
You could definitely say that our identity is being clutch right now, and it's all due to Jalen Brunson's shots in the last two games. We've seen so many performances of him doing that over and over, and right now it feels like that's what we are, a team that makes clutch shots, and it's a good feeling. It's definitely a good feeling that we can perform in crunch time, or specifically Brunson can. But for the identity of this team, I'm still trying to figure that out every single day. It's hard because, we see this team perform really well, put up 140 points, and then we see them get absolutely embarrassed by the Celtics and the Cavs. And it's hard to figure out an identity of a team that is a little bit all over the place. And, I don't blame them. This was a team that was assembled right before the start of the season. Chemistry takes time. Figuring out a team's identity takes time. But from what we've seen so far, there's been a lot of moments where this team likes to fight. And especially we saw that tonight where they came back from 19 points. That's the biggest deficit of the season that they've come back from. So I like when I see this team put in effort and fight, because that's what I want their identity to be. I want them to be fighters. I don't want them to settle and lack energy, because, that's one of the most important things to getting towards the chip, to getting to the finals. Those are important factors: energy, hustle, heart. That's what I want the identity of this team to be.
Yeah, and listen, that was the identity of the team last year, and a lot of people fell in love with that team for those exact reasons. I think you make another good point there, Mill, in that identity is something that takes time. It's not something you can have overnight. This is a team, as I've said multiple times on the show, 3 new starters in the starting lineup. They're finding adjustments. They're trying to figure out how to make things work. And look, maybe they're not there in the fighting part yet, but we do know they're there in terms of the clutch. They are looking like a really good clutch team, and the record is really impressive there. All right, Mel, so in Miami, the Knicks, they did not play much defense to start the game, right? Then we saw 2 stretches where the Knicks made a run with Cat off the floor and Mitchell Robinson on the floor. Then they came back to take the lead with Mikal Bridges, who was benched for most of the fourth quarter. Now, we saw Deuce McBride. He started overtime in that game, and it made me start thinking about the lineup, right? Should Tom Thibodeau experiment with more lineups with Deuce on the floor and just give him more minutes in general? This has been a huge talking point among Knicks fans. Do you think Deuce McBride should get more minutes based on what we've seen in the effort for him defensively and offensively in the last stretch of games?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think McBride should be out there. I think he's earned his spot to be out there. He's been on this team for so long and he's worked his way through not playing and very little minutes seasons ago to now playing off the bench. He's still not getting a lot of minutes, so I definitely agree that he should be getting more minutes and he should be in closing lineups like tonight that we saw. And he's an incredible player. I love to see how he's been able to expand his game offensively. Obviously, we've seen him develop the three-point shot, and he's always been a great defensive player as well. So to see him maintain that despite being an undersized guard, his tenacity, his effort has always gone above 100. So I absolutely support the idea of McBride getting more minutes. Yeah, I think he's earned that, and the coach should trust him to be out there. We saw him in the final possession before overtime. He switched on to Tyler Hero and he defended Hero really well. He ended up missing that shot. It was still a good shot. It almost went in, but he defended that well. And I'm glad he was out there. I definitely think he should be out there when we're closing and have Bridges on the bench. It does depend on the situation, of course, but in games where Bridges is severely struggling, yeah, put him on the bench and keep McBride out there. He deserves that, and it's better for the team. It's better for our performance.
Yeah, and I do think one thing of note that you mentioned there is that Tom Thibodeau has done this. I know Tom Thibodeau gets criticism for a lot of things in terms of sometimes not playing young players, which I think has been a bit overblown. But we have seen multiple times this season. We've seen Mikal Bridges bench twice. It happened in Charlotte on Black Friday. We saw it against the Heat here. If a lineup is working, he has been willing to go with it, and we have seen it. Now, the question is, should he go back to it more, which I asked you, and give him some more minutes? That has remained to be seen. We'll see what happens there. But that brings me to my next question, which is about Mitchell Robinson, because after you look at what you've seen from Mitch Mill in terms of his defensive impact, which we talked about earlier so far, do you think it's time for Tibbs to take a look at some minutes with him and Cat on the floor together? Because that is the part of the size that the Knicks haven't seen in terms of having Cat on the floor to be able to stretch the floor, but having Mitch there to protect the rim that could help a lot of this team's defensive issues. We saw how Cat looked in Minnesota next to Rudy Gobert. Not saying that Mitch Robinson's Rudy Gobert, but I think you get my point. Do you think it's time? I know it's only been 2 games, but it's time to at least see some of that lineup, even if it's for a couple of minutes in each game.
Yeah, I would love to see that combo together. We could definitely give them the nickname of the Twin Towers. They're here in New York, and a lot of fans were expecting that tonight. Everyone was tweeting, when are we going to see that duo out there together? But he is on a minute restriction, as we all know. I would love to see them out there together. That's something that I've been wanting to see since the minute we got Towns. I'm like, let's pair them together on the floor. I think that could be deadly for us on the defensive end. You have that size that could match up really well against certain teams. I mean, you look at the Cavs, they have 2 bigs, Allen, Mobley. That's a matchup I'd be looking forward to. And Robinson out there on the defensive end, you mentioned it, is his ability to defend, to protect the rim is key. That is something that we really need. The start of this game, the Heat came out here and they were laying up shots. They were dunking shots with ease. I didn't like that at all. And I definitely thought if we had Robinson out there from the get-go, that wouldn't have happened. But obviously he's coming off the bench for now. I would like to see them being played together. I think that gives us good size, and having Robinson on the floor for us defensively changes us into a different ball game, into a different team. So I would like to see those two paired together.
It'll be interesting to see if we see this over the final 22 games, right? Or is it something that Tom Thibodeau says, let me hold and wait to the playoffs? However, you would think, Mill, you want to sort of work on that, get guys comfortable with how they will look in these lineups. But it's a card the Knicks have to play that we haven't seen yet that could be really interesting down the stretch. Now, we talk about defense. We got to talk about OG Anunoby, because he's been looking back to his old form this week, and especially on the defensive end. How important is it in your eyes that OG is playing at this level if the Knicks want to get to where they want to go this season. How much do we need to see this kind of OG Anunoby, particularly on the defensive end?
It is incredibly important for this version of OG to be out there every single night. This is the OG that we fell in love with when he came to the Knicks last season. This is the OG that was a plus 287 in the first 15 games on the Knicks, which was the best plus minus of a player in NBA history. He immediately made an impact, and it wasn't because he was scoring. It was all of the little things he was doing between blocking, stealing, and rebounding and everything else. His defensive presence, the way he would help out. It was just incredible to witness last season, and that's the OG we all know and we immediately became fond of. And that's the same player we saw tonight. 23 points, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 5 assists, 9 rebounds. That's a great all-around stat line for him. And I'm especially proud of the offensive showing we're seeing from him. I feel like OG's been up and down a lot this season with his offensive scoring. We even saw him put up a 40-point game, but it's been up and down. So to see him have a good scoring night with putting up 23 points, I think that'll give him a boost of confidence on that end. The shot against Memphis, of course, gave him that boost of confidence to come out here and score like he has been. And I'm incredibly proud of what he did tonight, and I want to see more of this OG, the same OG that we saw last season. I want to see more of it every night. It could definitely help this team when he is playing at his best, and he is doing all of the little things that make this team a better team.
Yeah, I think it's the little things that count there. And you're seeing, at least from my eyes, right, you're seeing that tenacity on the defensive end, that, the ball hawking, the way he was defending Bam Adebayo, the way he was active on switches in the Memphis game. He's looked really, really good on that end. And, some of that is health. He's back to being healthy again. And, I think the Knicks fans are hoping that he can stay healthy, but he is looking good right now. Okay, let's look a little bit ahead with the Knicks, because they're going to be on the road 9 of the next 11 days. Their next 6 games are all against Western Conference opponents, including a 5-game West Coast trip. What are you going to be watching for with the Knickerbockers over this stretch of games against Western Conference opponents?
Well, it's been the topic of conversation for a while now for the Knicks, but I'm going to be looking specifically at their defense. I want to see it improve, and, especially with the addition of Mitchell Robinson, I want to see how he fits into our defense and how he makes it better. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see our interior defense improve, and I also want to see our 3-point perimeter defense being better. I'm a firm believer in defense wins games, and there's been a lot of games where we haven't played defense at all and we've lost those games. So I want to see how we perform out there on the defensive end, because I already know that this team is great and gifted, skilled offensively. We have Jalen Brunson, we have Karl-Anthony Towns, both pure scorers who can create their own shot. We have other guys, OG, Bridges, and who can also score the ball, but I want to see how this team can start defending as a unit and with Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Can the Knicks get up there? We talked about it on this show. Can they get up to the top 10, top 12 in defensive rating? Sunk down as low as 22. Can they start to get some of those good habits? We'll see. And they'll have some good teams that they'll be tested against here on the road. Golden State, they'll see the Lakers, see the Clippers. So some really good tests for them out west, and we'll see how they do. They do have Golden State at home on Tuesday night before they head out west. Last thing for me here, Mill, because I'm going to try to end with some hope, because last week there was no hope for the Knicks fan at all whatsoever. We talked about the difference between this weekend and last weekend. Do the wins like you saw in Memphis and Miami give you the belief that the Knicks can close the gap between themselves and the NBA's elite teams? And we're talking about OKC, we're talking about Cleveland, we're talking about Boston. Do you think what you've seen from them recently, does that give you any hope, or Knicks Nation any hope, that they can close the gap between themselves and the NBA's elite?
Yeah, I definitely think it gives you some hope. Obviously you don't like the fact that the Knicks put themselves in a position to go down 19 in this game, But I think it's important to highlight that they came back from it. You know, you can't just come back down 19. It takes a lot of effort. It takes fight. And I like that fight I saw from them tonight, specifically defensively, getting multiple stops in the third quarter, making Miami go scoreless for a few minutes, and then in overtime, getting those stops as well. I definitely think that there's hope for the future, that we can close that gap and we can become a better team to compete with those elite teams in the East and the West, specifically the Cavs and the Boston Celtics, who we're going to have to go through personally if we want to get to the finals. It's going to take a lot, I believe. I think that, you know, if those games were close, I would like to say that there's more hope, but those games were not close. So it's going to take a lot of work. And I think that the addition of Mitchell Robinson is key right now. Like I mentioned before, countless times, I think that his involvement on the defensive end will greatly improve this team for the better. And that can kind of close the gap a little bit on that end. But overall, a lot of nights you see this team just needs to work better as a unit. There's a lot of miscommunication going on overall on both ends of the floor. I think we have the talent, you know, we have the skill set to beat these teams. We have great players. We have all-star starters on our teams. We have the ability. I think that there's just miscommunication. And obviously there's other problems between our defense and rebounding, but that's going to change. That's going to improve. And I have hope that we can eventually beat those top teams.
Hey, I like the hope. It's a lot different than we heard last week because the sky was falling. It was over for the Knicks. And I understand what you're saying, too, and I talked about this last week, right? The fact that they got beat down by the Celtics, the fact that they got beat down by the Cavaliers, none of that inspired hope, right? None of that inspired hope at all. And, you know, but it's a long journey through the season. There's a long way to go. There's still 22 games left. We'll see what the Knicks do, see if they can improve their defense. But, you know, wins like you see for them recently, particularly in the clutch, and if that is part of their identity, maybe it's the fight you talked about, Mill. Maybe it's part of them being clutch. Maybe that is part of their identity. But time will tell. We'll see. It's a big stretch of games coming up here that Knicks fans will have their eyes on. I know you'll be watching. And everybody check out the work of Mill. She's one of the best when it comes to content creation around the Knickerbockers. Also, as I said before, a fantastic young journalist on the rise that everybody should be watching for. Mill, I'm glad. I think it's not our first time meeting because we've met before, but our first time connecting here for any content. So this was fun.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. It was a great time. I think we had a good discussion.
We had an absolutely great discussion, and we ended with some hope. That's all we're trying to do for the people. Thank you, Mel. I'll have you back here on New York Got Game soon. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
The Knicks are on fire!
All right, so an interesting week, as we mentioned, for the New York Knicks coming up. Got the game against the Warriors at the Garden on Tuesday before they head out west. But before we go, got to give some love because it's March Madness to the St. John's Red Storm. St. John's Red Storm have had a tremendous season this year. On Saturday, they clinched the Big East regular season title, 71-61 victory over Seton Hall. Sold out crowd at the Garden. I was there. The vibes were amazing. And watching St. John's do something, an outright win of the Big East title, something they had not done since 1985. That is 40 years, folks. Absolutely amazing. It's been a fantastic time for college basketball here in the Big Apple. Fans are really excited about what this St. John's team can do. They are in the top 10. They are looking like they can make a deep run into the NCAA tournament. They've been wildly impressive, particularly at home. All the games they've had at the Garden, at Carnesecca Arena, it has been impressive. How impressive? Undefeated at home this season. The last time a St. John's team went undefeated at home was back in 1932. So this is historic in what the Johnnies are doing right now, and they're playing fantastic basketball. And as we get deeper into March Madness this month, we're going to be talking a lot about the Johnnies right here on the show as the Knicks, they start to make their move and their push in the final quarter of the season as they try to move towards the playoffs. The Johnnies are looking to see how deep they can go in the NCAA tournament, and all eyes in terms of the basketball world in New York will be on the St. John's Red Storm. That does it for this edition of New York Got Game. Got to thank the people who make this possible. Special thanks to my editor, Corey Porter, my producer, Nicholas Federico, production assistant, Jeff Stansbury. I'm Dexter Henry. We'll catch you next week on New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.